Their campsite was surrounded by freshly dug holes, each exactly the size of a grave. At first, none of us noticed. We had hiked most of the afternoon through a stretch of forest that didn't appear on the park's official map. The trail we'd followed dissolved sometime after noon, narrowing into animal tracks, then into nothing but bent grass and broken twigs. The deeper we went, the quieter the woods became, until even the wind seemed reluctant to pass between the trees. Caleb said that was perfect. Means nobody comes out here, he told us, dropping his pack beside a ring of stones near a clearing. Real camping. The clearing wasn't large, maybe 20 feet across. Moss covered most of the ground, interrupted by patches of soft soil where roots pushed upward like knuckles beneath skin. The trees surrounding it were old and tall enough to swallow most of the sky. We set up camp there. The smell of disturbed earth was the first thing I noticed, though I didn't think much of it then. Just a damp, raw scent drifting through the clearing, like soil after heavy rain. We pitched 2 tents, gathered dead branches, and started a small fire. The woods held the sound close. Every snap of a twig echoed as if the forest were listening. By the time the fire settled into a steady glow, the sun had slipped behind the trees. That was when Emma found the first hole. "Hey!" she called from the edge of the clearing. "Did you guys dig this?" Caleb laughed. "We just got here." But when we walked over, the hole was there, fresh. The soil around it had been piled neatly beside the opening. The sides were cut straight down, almost clean enough to look carved. At the bottom, about 4 feet deep, lay dark, damp earth. Caleb stepped beside it. It was almost exactly his height. "Probably some animal," he said. Emma shook her head slowly. "No animal digs rectangles." The hole was narrow and long, like a grave. We joked about it for a while after that. Old logging sites sometimes left strange pits in the ground. Maybe someone had started digging and stopped. Still, when we returned to the fire, I couldn't stop smelling the dirt. Not the earthy scent of forest soil. Something sharper, like the ground had just been opened. We found the second hole when Caleb went to collect more wood. His voice came from the dark. "Okay, that's weird." We followed the beam of his flashlight about 15 yards past the clearing. Another grave-shaped hole waited there. Fresh dirt, straight sides, perfect dimensions. It faced the clearing like a doorway. Emma turned slowly, scanning the trees. "How long have these been here?" Caleb crouched near the edge and touched the soil. "It's still loose." "Loose how?" "Like it was dug today." None of us spoke for a moment. The forest felt heavier somehow, as if the trees had leaned closer while we weren't looking. Then I noticed something. "Look!" I pointed my flashlight toward the clearing. From where we stood, we could see the edge of another hole, partially hidden by moss. Then another, and another. They formed a rough circle around the campsite, each one the same length, the same width, the same depth. 10 graves, maybe 12, all newly dug. Emma let out a small laugh that sounded forced and thin. "Someone's messing with us." "Out here," I said. "There's no trail." Caleb stood slowly. We'd hear them digging. The woods were silent. Not normal forest quiet, where insects hum and leaves whisper, but something heavier. Stillness with weight. The kind of silence that makes your ears strain for sound that isn't there. Then the smell of dirt grew stronger, like something beneath the soil had been disturbed. We moved the fire closer to the center of the clearing. No one said it, but none of us wanted to stand near the holes anymore. They felt wrong. Too deliberate. Too precise. Graves made for people who hadn't died yet. Caleb kept shining his flashlight between the trees. Emma kept counting the holes. "There are 12, she said eventually. "Maybe they're old graves," I offered. "From what?" "No headstones," Caleb said. "No markers." Emma looked around slowly. "They're also spaced evenly." I followed the line of her flashlight. She was right. Each hole sat the same distance apart, forming a wide ring around the campsite. Like someone had measured it, or planned it. The fire crackled quietly. Smoke drifted upward into the branches where it disappeared among the leaves. Then something moved. At first I thought it was wind. A shadow sliding between two trees beyond the nearest hole. But the trees hadn't moved. The shadow did. Slow, tall, too narrow. I blinked and it was gone. Did you see that? I asked. See what? Something out there. Caleb raised his flashlight. The beam swept over the nearest hole. The soil inside it shifted. Just slightly, like something had pressed upward beneath it. We all saw it. None of us spoke. The dirt rose again, then settled. Emma whispered, "That's not an animal." Caleb stepped closer to the hole. Probably just roots collapsing. But his voice sounded different now. Careful, uneasy. The dirt moved again. This time it parted. A narrow shape pushed slowly through the soil. Not claws, not paws. Fingers, thin and pale. They curled over the edge of the hole. The hand was too long, too jointed, and it moved like it had learned how from watching people. Another hand appeared beside it. Then something pulled itself upward. The figure that emerged was almost human. Almost. Its limbs were slightly too long. Its skin the dull color of clay. Its face smooth and unfinished, like a mask pressed from mud. But its eyes were open, and they were watching us. More dirt shifted around the clearing. Soft, steady movement. One by one, shapes began rising from the other holes. 12 graves, 12 figures. Emma's voice trembled. They're coming out of them. The creatures climbed slowly from the pits, brushing soil from their bodies with slow, deliberate motions. They moved awkwardly at first, then more naturally, like something remembering how to stand. Caleb whispered, "Don't run." I didn't ask why. The forest already knew where we were. The figures turned toward the campsite, toward us, their heads tilted in the same direction. Listening, watching, learning. Then one of them stepped forward. It walked exactly the way Caleb did. Same posture, same rhythm. Emma gasped quietly. "It's copying him." Another creature began mimicking Emma's stance. Arms folded, head slightly lowered. Each figure mirrored one of us. Movements, breathing, posture, like reflections slowly learning their originals. The soil around the holes kept shifting, not rising now, settling, as if something beneath the ground had finished preparing the space. The creatures moved closer. The firelight flickered across their clay-colored skin, and I realized something about the graves. They weren't random. Each one stood exactly where we had first stepped when we entered the clearing, where we had walked, where we had stood. The forest had been watching us the entire time, marking the ground, preparing the shapes. Emma whispered, "They're replacing us." The nearest creature tilted its head. Then it smiled, not with lips, with the slow splitting of the smooth surface where a mouth should be. Behind us, the forest shifted. Branches creaked. Roots groaned softly beneath the soil. And somewhere deeper in the woods, more earth began to move. More holes opening. More shapes preparing. Caleb backed away slowly. "Those graves." His voice faltered. "They're not for bodies." One of the creatures stepped into the clearing. Its eyes never left him. "They're molds." A distant light moved through the trees, but it cast no glow on the surroundings. At first I thought it was another hiker. A lantern, maybe. Someone else who had wandered too far from the marked trails and decided to cut through the forest before dark. The woods out there were old and thick, but they weren't supposed to be dangerous. At least that's what the map had suggested. But the longer I watched the light drift between the trees, the more something about it felt wrong. It glided silently about 50 yards away, weaving through the trunks with steady, deliberate motion. Yet the forest around it remained perfectly dark. No branches lit up. No leaves caught the glow. It was a light that illuminated nothing. Caleb noticed it next. "Someone out there?" he asked quietly. Emma leaned closer to the edge of the small ridge where we had stopped to drink water. Probably another group, but she sounded uncertain. The sun had already dipped low behind the mountains, leaving the forest in that gray hour when shadows blur and distance begins to lie. Tall firs and ancient cedars crowded together below us, their trunks thick enough to block what little daylight remained. The light moved again. It slid between two trees. No beam spread outward. No glow brushed the bark. It simply existed, an orb of pale white drifting through darkness like a detached star. Caleb frowned. That's weird. Maybe it's one of those LED lanterns, Emma suggested. I shook my head slowly. Even those throw light. We watched it for another minute. The light stopped, not slowly, instantly, as if whoever carried it had frozen mid-step. Then it changed direction, not turning like someone walking, just sliding sideways through the trees. Caleb muttered, "Okay, that's not a person." The woods around us had grown unnaturally quiet. Not just the absence of birds or insects, but a deeper silence. The kind where sound seems to hesitate before traveling. Emma spoke softly. "You think it's a drone?" "No sound," Caleb said. We waited. The light began moving again. Closer now. Still weaving through the forest floor with careful precision. And still illuminating nothing. The deeper it came, the more the darkness around it seemed to bend away, like shadows refusing to share space with it. Then something else began to feel wrong. The distance. It looked like it was 50 yards away. But it should have reached the ridge by now. Instead it kept drifting at the same distance, never closer, never farther. Like it was moving toward us without crossing space. Emma whispered, "Why isn't it getting closer?" Caleb stood slowly. "Maybe we're misjudging the distance." But I had spent enough nights hiking to know when perspective was lying. This wasn't perspective. The forest itself felt stretched, as if the ground between us and the light kept rearranging itself. Then the sound came, a footstep, behind us. We turned instantly. Nothing stood there, only the narrow trail we had followed earlier and the thick trees pressing close around it. Then another sound, the same footstep, but this time it came from the direction of the light. Emma frowned. That was delayed. Caleb nodded slowly. "Yeah." He kicked a small rock down the ridge. We watched it bounce against roots and disappear into the brush below. The sound followed 3 seconds later. Too late, like the forest had waited before allowing it to exist. The light drifted closer again, still 50 yards away, still revealing nothing. My skin prickled. It felt like we were watching something that wasn't meant to be understood by normal senses. Emma spoke again, her voice quieter now. "Do you feel that?" "Feel what?" "Like, it's looking at us." The light stopped moving. For a moment it hovered perfectly still between two black tree trunks. Then it rose, not upward like something lifted. It simply appeared higher in the air, 10 feet above the ground. Then 15. No sound, no motion, just repositioned. Caleb swallowed. Lights don't move like that. The forest around it shifted subtly. Not visually, but spatially. The trees seemed farther apart now. The ground sloped differently. The ridge beneath our feet felt longer. Emma turned toward the trail. "We should leave." No one argued. We began moving back the way we had come, climbing through roots and brush toward the faint path we'd followed earlier. But after 30 seconds, Caleb stopped. "This isn't right." The ridge behind us looked unfamiliar. The trail had vanished. Where it should have been was only dense undergrowth and fallen branches. Emma's breathing quickened. "We just came from here." I turned back toward the valley. The light still floated between the trees, still 50 yards away. Watching, the same distance, always the same distance, like a lure tied to invisible line. Then it split, not dramatically, just quietly. The single orb divided into two identical lights, both hovering, neither illuminating anything. Emma whispered, "That didn't just happen." But it had. The two lights drifted apart slowly, one sliding left, the other right. They moved through the forest with careful patience, like fishermen widening a net. Caleb stepped backward. "Don't follow them." I hadn't realized until then that my feet had started moving forward. The lights pulled at something instinctive, a quiet curiosity, a need to understand. Emma grabbed my arm. They want us to move. The realization spread slowly. The lights weren't approaching us. They were guiding us. Each shift forced us to adjust position to keep them in sight. Each adjustment pulled us deeper between the trees, and the forest rearranged itself to make sure we stayed within reach. Then the third light appeared, farther back, hovering behind the others, and something moved beneath it, a shape rising slowly from the ground. Tall, unnaturally thin. Its body looked like overlapping shadows stitched together by faint threads of pale light. It walked without disturbing the forest floor, without sound, without reflection. Then another shape rose beside it. Then another. Emma's voice trembled. They're using them. The lights. They weren't sources of illumination. They were markers. Signals floating above the creatures moving below. The way deep-sea fish carry lures. To attract something curious enough to approach. The creatures moved with slow patience, keeping perfect distance from the lights above them. Studying us, Caleb whispered, "Don't look directly at them." But it was too late. One of the figures tilted its head. The light above it flickered once, and suddenly the forest shifted again. The trees leaned slightly closer. The ridge lengthened beneath our feet. Distance stretched like soft clay. Emma squeezed my arm harder. They're measuring us. Another light appeared deeper in the woods. Then another, a scattered constellation hovering among the trees. And beneath each one something stirred. Shapes rising from the forest floor. Tall silhouettes stitched from darkness. Watching, waiting, understanding. Caleb stepped backward slowly. Those lights. His voice sounded thin in the heavy silence. They're not guiding us. Another flicker passed through the floating orbs, and the creatures beneath them took one synchronized step forward. Emma whispered the realization before any of us could stop it. They're mapping us. The lights adjusted slightly in the air, repositioning, calibrating, marking where we stood, like survey stakes hammered into invisible ground. Far deeper in the forest, more lights blinked into existence. Hundreds of them, and the shapes beneath them began to rise, because the forest wasn't trying to lure us. It was studying the way humans moved through space, learning our distance, our reactions, our fear, preparing the lights, so next time, they would bring them closer,